Hey guys, Doc back with you here to talk about a book that I picked up recently. It's Green Lantern Superman, Legend of the Green Flame, and this time the artwork was done by Mike Allred and Terry Austin, Mark Buckingham, John Totalman, Matt Wagner, Eric Shanower, and Arthur Adams, Jim Aparo, Kevin Nolan, and Jason Little, with colors by Matt Hollingsworth. And this was apparently a lost script that Mark Waid had gotten from Neil when he was an editor back in the late 80s, around 1988 or so. And unfortunately, what they were trying to do is they were trying to wrap up all of the characters from Action Comics Weekly, which was something that they did. I think they said for 42 issues or something like that. So almost a year. And they were trying to get Green Lantern, Superman, Etrigan the Demon, and a bunch of those other characters that starred in that book. They were going to let Neil play in that world. The only catch was the script got lost and couldn't be used because they had just had the reboot of Superman in 1986, and so Hal Jordan wasn't supposed to know that Clark Kent and Superman were one and the same anymore. He had lost that information when they rebooted the series. But anyway, so they found this script in 2000, and they had all of these awesome art, different artists come on for this story where Hal Jordan is kind of burned out. He's kind of trying to figure out what kind of hero he is and what kind of man he is to stand beside giants like Superman. And let's see. There you go. That's a little bit more showy of the artwork of what we've got there. And each artist did a few pages of it. So like I said, we had 7 different artists work on this title. So each artist kind of brings with it a different feeling. Let's see. Here's Bucky. You can definitely tell by the face that's Mark Buckingham, and he really shines on these pages. But the story is interesting because they are at a museum and they find an old lantern. It looks very much like Alan Scott's lantern, the Golden Age Green Lantern, but it looks even older. And that's it. Hal says it reminded me of Alan Scott's lantern, but it can't be. This was found in the 40s, and Alan had his battery until he vanished a few years back. And so he decides to try to go with Alan's motto instead of in brightest day and blackest night. Instead, he recites in front of the lantern, or actually, no, this time he does use in brightest day and blackest night. And all of a sudden, they just get inundated with this green flame. And you gotta love John Totalman's artwork. You've got to. The line work, the detail, and then, of course, they meet Boston Brand. And he tries to explain to him, you're dead, but you're not dead. If you follow the light, if you keep going that way and you keep following the light, then you'll be dead. So eventually Hal says, I'm gonna try to use the ring to send us back to our bodies. And instead, in this next, which I think this is Eric Shanower and Art Adams, we get to see the Phantom Stranger, who was another character in this particular story. And he's trapped in his apartment, but he finds a way to get free. Meanwhile, Green Lantern and Superman are still trapped in hell, which is the hell of Sandman at that time, because like I said, Neil wrote this right about the same time, or actually he wrote it before he wrote Sandman, so it was the hell that Alan Moore's Swamp Thing had gone through. So it's great to see these characters kind of out of their element. I didn't even realize about Jim Aparo until right now. You can tell by the way that the cape flows, and then you can tell a little bit by his face. But Jim had pretty much retired at that point from doing a whole lot of penciling and inking. So it looks like, let's see if I'm right on this. Let's see. Yep, he only did that one page with the Phantom Stranger. And then you go back to Kevin Nolan here. So it's really, hey, for $3 you can't beat it. I'm not going to say that it's one of Neil Gaiman's greatest stories, but it gives Hal some, a couple of layers that you don't normally see. And then you get to see his friendship with Superman at that time when he knew who Clark Kent was and who Superman was. So it's really a fun little romp just to kind of get it out there, you know, get it out of the ether and pull it into the real world. So I'm happy. The Frank Miller cover was kind of neat, you know, even though you don't really get to see too much detail. Frank was in his transition period at that point as far as his old artwork versus his new artwork. But in the end, it wrapped up very solidly, and I thought that everybody put in, if not their greatest art, they put in a solid effort. So really, really fun stuff and different for the time. And at this point, this was $5.95, and it was in 2000. So this was, I think Jim Aparo passed in 2003, so it was towards the end of his life, and that's probably why he only did one page and didn't do any further. But great stuff. Amazing that they found this. They said the story behind this was that Neil had lost his copy of the script. Somehow Mark Waid had lost his copy of the script, and they couldn't seem to find it at DC either. But in conversation, Neil was talking with a friend of his that owned one of the comic shops here in America. And he said, you know what, I had a copy of that, and I gave it to a friend of mine, so let me see if I can, you know, track that down. And boom, here we are. So it's nice to see lost works back in, like I said, not in the ether, but in the material world. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little quick overview of this particular book. Like I said, it's not the greatest, although that Total Ben artwork is, to me, some of the greatest looking stuff that you'll see. So, like I said, thanks for watching, guys. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch up with you later.